we are nearly done. We're just do one simple thing, which is bring it all together. So I have been getting really into making my own pizza dough lately, and so I made this. This is my favorite recipe that I found so far, right here, and it's got some complicated steps to the process. But what we're going to do is make a little widget here that I could put on any recipe page that will change, if I click on this, will change as a button that will change all these measurements over here and double them all. So this is one batch, but if I clicked on this, it would make two batches. And so let's take a look at the HTML and CSS. It's not that complicated. So down here, the main piece, the piece de resistance is right here. It's a UL with some LIs. And inside of that are a series of spans. And those spans each have an ID that's unique that wraps around the number that they represent. So water gets water, flour gets flour, etc. Then in my styles, I've gone ahead and taken those spans and made them bold. And I've made the LIs and the H1s look nice. And I styled my button, which is right here, just a div, to just look like a button. You know, if I really wanted to get fancy, I'd probably put roundy edges on there, a little drop shadow or something, but you get the idea. And that yields this. This doesn't do anything, but it looks cool. It doesn't do jack squat. So what I want to do is, well, make it so when you click on this button, it changes these numbers. And the first thing I notice is that when I roll this button, buttons are supposed to not show this cursor. They're supposed to show the little arrow. And so what you might do is go ahead and just Google CSS cursor change. And when you do that, you'll learn that you can, in fact, change the cursor based on what's happening. So instead of just like a normal cursor, which would be this like little text box that appears or an arrow, what I might want to do is change it into a finger. And so if I look through here, I can look at all the different options of different things that you can do. There's a ton of them. But the one we want is, I think, called pointer. Let's check out their little test area here. You can see it shows me what all the cursors are by changing when I roll over each one. But I believe pointer is what we want. So yeah, if we set cursor to, well, whatever pointer is, to pointer, it makes it look like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on my button. And so now when I roll over my button, it looks like a button. Awesome. Now let's go actually make this button do something. So to do that is really simple. We've already talked about that. I'm just going to add an event handler. And I'm going to have it call a function that I haven't created yet. But we'll call this second change batch. I haven't created change batch yet, so let's do that up in our script tag. Create a function called change batch. And to make sure that it works, something I like to do is just run a quick alert. This just makes sure that I got my on click, I don't have any typos, there's no other major problems. And so it's a great way to just do a little gut check, make sure that you're on track. So when I click on this, it says yep. You know, if you're kind of constructing a haystack one piece at a time, and then you throw a needle in there, and every single time, every single thing that you throw in, so you go, hey, you know, piece of hay, piece of hay, piece of hay, needle, piece of hay, piece of hay, piece of hay, needle. You know, it's really hard to find that needle in that haystack once you've built it. But if you're testing every single moment that you throw a little bit in, it's really easy to find that needle. And so same thing here. I'm going to kind of go bit by bit, even when I know what I'm doing, like I do right now. I'm going to go really slow and test as I go to make sure that things work how I'm expecting them to. So I just alerted the word yep, and it works. What I'm going to do is instead now alert out what's inside of water. And that requires a new thing we haven't talked about yet. And that's called document.innerHTML. So what I'm going to do is get element by ID water dot inner HTML. And I'm going to alert this out so you can see it. But what inner HTML lets me do is get things inside of a tag. So when I alert it, it says 480. And that 480 is coming from inside of this span. So this span wraps around 480, and the span has the ID of water. So when I say get me the inner HTML of water, it means the thing it's wrapping around is 480. If I were to change this to flower, it would say 3. Ta-da. So what's cool about JavaScript is that I can not just simply read out inner HTML, but I can actually use HTML or inner HTML to change the inside. So for instance, I'm going to say change flower to, I don't know, good job. And so now when I run this button, it changes 480, bink, or I'm sorry, it's changing the flower. It changes that 3 from the word 3 to the word good job. So I can use inner HTML to both read out what something is and set it to something else. So I'm going to use it in both ways here. So super cool. So now I know how to do stuff. And assuming every single thing inside of this span is a number, I can read out that number, double it, and then write the result back out into it. And so when I click on the change to two batches, it will change, it will double it. So let's just gonna do that with the first one. So that's water. And change its inner HTML to the contents of water times 2. And so now if I refresh it, when I hit this button, it'll double 480 to 960. And then if I hit it again, it'll get even bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Refresh. All right, so that's for water. But once I have it for one, I can very quickly do it for all of them. So copy, paste. How many I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whoa, 5, 6. I'm gonna make this my text editor a little bit bigger so it's easier to read. Water, flour, yeast, salt, oil. Did I miss one? Water, water, flour, flour, yeast, yeast. Oh, we have 2 things called flour. Oopsie doops. Let's get rid of this one. So water, yeast, flour, water, yeast, flour, salt, oil. We have 2 things that say water. No, get out of here. Save. So now, when I hit this button, it will double everything. Now, you see these are all the same. I forgot to change it in 2 places. So it's taking the value of water, doubling it, and assigning it to yeast's value. So I'm all whacked out here, but we'll fix that really quick. And it doesn't just change the 2 batches. I'm going to say double the batches. And so now every time I click this, it will double all of them. And let's make it easy to keep track of how many we doubled. So I have an H3 down here. I'm just wrapping an ID of batches around it, and I'm going to do the exact same trick to it. And of course, I would style batches so that it matches all the other ones. Pretty cool. So there you go. Think about what you've learned in just a handful of videos. Understand the basics of JavaScript. You know what a variable is in JavaScript. You know what an event handler is in JavaScript, what a function is in JavaScript. You know what methods are. So methods would be things like inner HTML. You know how dot syntax works inside of JavaScript. And there's a ton of other things we can do with dot syntax that you can Google around on. But this is just the beginning. And JavaScript is incredibly powerful. Hopefully this has whet your appetite to learn more. But now you can do some really simple things to really significantly improve the usability and usefulness of your recipes. So there you go.